folks, welcome to Devoxx UK. We're bringing back the interviews with certain speakers from Devoxx UK that spoke on interesting topics. And we're having today with us Brian Vermeer, who has talked about what at Devoxx UK?
Yeah, I thought we spoke because I did this talk together with Lisa Ras, from one of the core maintainers from LangChain4j. We talked about how to secure your LLM powered applications because a lot of people talk about the cool things about like how to implement LLMs. We were going into the more security detail around that.
But I thought LLMs are just, there to generate code for us and to do all the cool stuff. Why is there a need to think about security when using AI?
That's a very good question. Like you can use your LLMs to generate your code. That's one thing. However, generated code can be vulnerable as well, but that's not the point we're getting into. Say you want to integrate an LLM in your application, like for instance, a assistant. Normally, you do that with customer support, but you now use your LLM as a chatbot assistant that is also allowed to execute certain stuff like create a booking or delete a user or something like that. How to secure that? Because at that now you're giving your LLM as part of your application that you put in production, and you give it the power to execute functions on its own. And what could possibly go wrong, right?
So there's a way like to limit those potential, let's say, bad actions or bad actors maybe at some point that would like to exploit your LLM to actually do not so nice stuff within your own application. And for this talk, you mentioned LangChain4j. So pretty much you use Java and what else?
We're using a mix of things. So
Yeah.
one of the demos is written in Spring Boot with vanilla LangChain4j, and another demo is written in Quarkus because the integration with LangChain4j and the Quarkus version of LangChain4j has some nice aspects to it. So we show both sides of basically the bigger framework world within Java, and it's all written in the newer Java versions. I think it's like we wrote it in, or I wrote mine in Java 21. Because a lot of people are on the so-called LTS versions, but at least a newer version of Java with one of the newer versions of LangChain4j.
Oh, that's cool. So LangChain4j pretty much it has compatibility with the latest versions of Java,
Absolutely.
and that's something that it's good to hear for our audience that are thinking like to use the cutting edge technologies. I mean, AI has been let's say, quite new to our agenda as developers. So maybe if you're starting an AI project or a project with LangChain4j, you would like to use the latest version of Java as well. So it's good news to hear that those things work together and you're using two of the most popular frameworks at the
Yep.
moment. So people have like variety in picking up what demos they like more.
Absolutely. And it's not only about how to implement it, but to have some familiarity with actual enterprise applications that people are familiar with. Okay, like a lot of people write in Spring, some other people write in Quarkus, and it doesn't matter because with these integrations, either LangChain4j, but also, for instance, Spring AI, it's quite easy to integrate LLMs into your application. But then it's the point, like as a developer, you're responsible of how your application is going to respond, like if it's performance, but also if it's secure, yes or no. So because of the easy integrations with all these frameworks that we have, we thought it would be a good way to point out, like, hey, there are certain caveats to the story, to make sure that you do it in a safe way and you get not bitten by it later on, because then it could be horrible.
Okay, so speaking of the LLMs and so on, do you use certain models? Do you think that there are certain models that are more vulnerable or that would make you more vulnerable to others? What did you use as models?
There's definitely a difference between models. We didn't use all the models, obviously, and this changes basically every day. But if you say you use a big commercial model, these models are already a bit stronger and a bit better and a bit more predictive. for certain reasons, but also then you get into the privacy and that aspect, like what are they going to do with your data, because you send that over the line to their servers and you have no clue what's actually happening. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but at least it's something you have to look into. You can use the local models, but most open source local models are not as strong.
Yes.
So we get into that as well, the end of our session, when to use what model, and also, like, it's not always, or it looks great to use a general purpose model for most stuff, but sometimes it might be better to choose a very specifically trained model for very specific reasons. Because, well, they're trained for that, and not all general purpose models are a fit for everything, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and also that would limit the noise that would generate, and when it comes to too much general purpose present there, and it's better to be focused on your framework or the purpose of your application, the technical aspects of your application. Speaking of security, and because there's another popular topic at the moment, it's about MCP. Can you please talk a bit about MCP to our audience, and what's your opinion from a security point of view about it?
Well, let's start at the beginning. Like, currently, you can, if you have any of the big frameworks, you can give tools to your LM. Basically, you're giving functions. You make functions available to your LM to execute these functions. TLDR, with an MCP, you can create a server, and with the MCP protocol, you can feed this to, for instance, Claude Desktop, or to any, like, it's a protocol. So you can create the service, and then you make these functions available to another system. The thing is, first of all, if you already have that in your system, as in just a general tool, not even an MCP, but a general tool, you do not have full control over when your LLM is executing a certain function. It does as it feels fit, which is weird because it's a model, but still, if it thinks it needs to do something, then it will execute that function. You have no full control over the parameters that it will send to that function. If you extrapolate that to an MCP, which is a remote server that you talk to, and the functions are available, you have no clue what's happening, basically. There is at this point, there is no form of authentication or authorization to MCPs. You don't know what the side effects are. You also don't know when it's going to execute that. And if you're just, say, connecting your application to a remote MCP server, what does it do with your data? What kind of side effects does it? I don't know. Let's take it beyond the point. Does it offload your tokens to a server? Like, actually, we're getting back into the old supply chain security discussion that we already had.
Now it's more automatically done.
Of course.
By a decision maker that we don't control that much. That's all. These is very, very good insight, especially for our audience. And well, we're looking forward to we're actually inviting our audience to look at the talk that you and Lisa have given at Devoxx UK, to look at the cool demos, to look at all the explanations, because I'm sure that any aspects that are not so well known about security and AI are being touched there.
Absolutely.
in that talk.
Absolutely.
And it's great to see LangChain4j championing Java, working with AI, but in a very safe way, thanks to you and Lise, and not the way that it would expose our applications to further issues. So, Brian, as we need to conclude a bit our conversation,
cool.
What would be the 3 takeaways from your talk, if I can limit them only to
three takeaways. Regular vulnerabilities can also be harmful to your LLMs, meaning there's context involved. And if you can poison context, it will have an effect on how your LLM will respond. So you can just chain that attack. That's one thing. Secondly, think about your architecture. As in, when should you use a certain LLM or a certain model? There's no one big model to rule them all. Is not a great thing. Also think about, we talked about state machines or state transitioning to build in security. That not something can just happen. So think about your architecture. And the last one is look at forms of sanitizing input and output to your LLMs. And one of the great features for that are guardrails.